Welcome back to the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts thinks the Seahawks should always feed K9. That's his policy in life. That's Lenny. It actually might be a key to Thursday Night Football. We're going to discuss that. I'm Mina Kimes, and as always, I will be previewing all of this week's games, but I'm joined by a new guest. Well, he's not new, but we haven't had him on in a minute. Trevor Sikkema of PFF. Trevor, welcome back to the show. Your backdrop looks excellent.
Thank you, Mina. I appreciate it. I'm just trying to keep up. I'm excited for this one. This is always fun when you get to preview every single game. Allows you to keep tabs on the rest of the league. And just selfishly, it just gives me time to catch up on literally every single team. So I enjoy it and I appreciate you having me on.
As we have been doing, we are going to talk about every game. Some games we will talk about at greater length than others. A few of them I picked for us to just kind of focus on one key each, and we kind of parse them out. Before we start, I do want you to let everyone know you do more than one show. What are the shows that you do?
Yes, a lot. Tough for me to even remember. No, but over at the PFF NFL show, we do all sorts of stuff. We do grade release shows where we're reviewing every single game of the week. We do grade preview shows. So we're previewing the same things kind of that we're doing here on this podcast. But then we have 3 shows that I really love where in the middle of the week, we actually get to dive a little bit deeper into things and what happened the previous weeks as well, where we look at the Into Trenches show. Myself and Ollie Conley do that every single week where we look at some sort of impactful play within the trenches. I have a rookie review with John Ledyard that we do where we just look at rookie performances throughout the week and throughout the season. And then myself and Seth Galena have a QB showcase where we're breaking down quarterback performances every single week. So those are all the shows that I do that are sometimes very difficult for even my Google Calendar to keep track of.
All people who have been guests on the Mina Kimes Show, so listeners know them well. Okay, so as a reminder, we were going chronologically. We are doing Thursday Night Football. So if you're listening to this on Friday morning, you can skip over the next few minutes, or you can laugh at how wrong we were, or marvel at how right we were. I don't know. In any case, it is unfortunately my account this week. It's Niners Seahawks, a game that probably for the last 4 years I have not looked forward to. Ever since Kyle Shanahan became the coach of the San Francisco 49ers, this game has been my personal hell. I hate it when it's on in prime time. So there are some notable injuries on both sides of the ball, particularly the Seahawks defense losing people, getting certain people back. I am on Seattle. They're the home team. You are on San Francisco. Why don't you go first in this one and say what you think is key for the 49ers to pull out the win? The 2-3 49ers.
Yeah, I think that the 49ers, just the offensive line in general, I think when we think of the offensive line, we think of, Trent Williams, and we just think like, oh, it's a great unit because Kyle Shanahan has such great production when it comes to the run game, and the offensive line's great, and anybody can get rushing yards behind this offensive line. That means that it's universally good. And obviously it is a talented offensive line, but they haven't been as cohesive this season. Every single one of the 49ers offensive lineman starters have allowed at least 9 pressures this season. And so there have been areas to exploit with this offensive line, I think, throughout the year. And when you look at the opponent that they're going up against, it's a Seahawks defensive line that is playing really well under Mike Macdonald. And these guys are playing super confident, putting these defensive linemen in really good positions to succeed. And so this is a unit that is top 10 in the NFL in pressures. And so when you kind of combine the fact that there have been ups and downs with every single member, Trent Williams included, of this San Francisco 49ers offensive line going up against the Seattle Seahawks at home. The crowd obviously livens up the defensive line and the defense even more. It's an area where I'm a little bit worried. And so to me, it's about, is the Niners offensive line ready to step up? Because obviously beyond that, they've got good pass catchers. Obviously Brock Purdy is playing really, really well this season as well. But if you could protect him, I think that he could do enough for them to win the game. And so to me, that offensive line for San Francisco is the area that I look at.
Yeah, they've been passing a lot more too, right? This year, they've been Kyle Shanahan has been much pass heavier on early downs and neutral scripts. And he's certainly testing them a bit more than they have in past years. So the Seahawks defense, I alluded to the injuries. I'll just mention Uchenna Nwosu came back briefly. Now he's headed back to the IR. Byron Murphy II is still whirled out. However, they do get Boye Mafe back, who might be their best pass rusher right now. Yeah. I kind of think he is. And Leo Williams. So players in, players out. Reek Woolen is not playing, by the way, as well, which is a huge problem. My feeling about that is, like, after watching the Seahawks defense over the last couple weeks, the best way you can help them out, you don't really need to throw the ball on this team, man. Like I would go heavy run. I would also go heavy play action. San Francisco has been amazing with the play action packs this year, first in EPA per play. And so their EPA per play when they use the play action is 0.44. It drops to 0.03 without. The Seahawks defense has really struggled to stop play action. You certainly saw that over the last couple of weeks. The linebackers have been a problem. And that's actually my key for this game is like, can the linebackers play better than what we've seen in recent weeks? Last week, Jerome Baker came back playing next to Terrell Dodson. They've been really, really bad at fitting the run. They have also struggled, as I kind of alluded to, just with the play action pass. It's an interesting question for me because I know like Mike McDonald, who's the head coach and defensive coordinator, he wants to play, similarly to with Baltimore, split safety defense. But I think we're kind of seeing he might not have the players to do it just yet. And while the pressure has been good, and I think the secondary is good, not having Woolen really hurts. It's really the second level where I've been like, oh, I'm not so sure about this unit right now. And of course, there's one thing Kyle Shanahan knows how to do, man. It's make the lives of linebackers utterly and incredibly miserable.
It's very true. And, it not to make everything about the NFL draft, but as an NFL draft guy, I love to do it. It's one of those things where when I try to, long-term project, okay, what could the Seahawks potentially be looking at this upcoming draft? I wonder if trying to make a huge splash at linebacker might be an area that they look at because, like you mentioned, Mike McDonald is coming from a defense where he had a lot of flexibility with, I think, two players in particular. One of them was Kyle Hamilton, right, who's an alien and everything that he could do in the secondary and in the slot. And then the other one is Roquan Smith. And I think that Roquan Smith, being who he is, allows you to build a lot of things out from that defense. And I think he's sort of missing that player in the middle at the linebacker level. So I do agree with you on those fronts.
What have you made of the San Francisco 49ers defense? Because, the fact that they're 2 it's interesting. I think they're better than 2 and 3 as a team. I think they've had red zone problems, special teams issues, mishaps across the board. But I also think this defense does not look as good as they have in recent years. They have lost players, by the way, right? Obviously, Drake Greenlaw's still not playing. You lose Javon Hargrave. Secondary, they just lost Talanoa Hufanga. So when you watch them this year, like if you're Seattle, a team that has a very good quarterback who they struggle to protect and has not been running the ball, an offensive coordinator who says we need to run the ball more, would you do that against this team? Is there a particular way that you think Ryan Grubb should try to attack them?
Yeah, they should absolutely, because when you look at that Giants game that they just played, 7 designed carries to running backs, like 7. That's it. I mean, I love Geno as much as the next guy, and I think the ball in his hand is a great strategy. But you've got to be able to feed Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet a lot more than 7 carries, 7 designed carries total in the game. And I think this 49ers defensive line is the one to do it up against, because we even saw this with the Cardinals last week. This is a group that, when it comes to PFF grades, 52.2 run defense grade as a team against the Cardinals specifically. 58.3 run defense grade on the season. That's only 23rd in the NFL. So I think a lot of times when we think about this San Francisco 49ers defensive line, we think that it's so feared and it's incredible and it imposes its will no matter what. Not exactly when it comes to run defense. This is a bottom half team in the NFL when it comes to run defense. And in fact, I was watching that Cardinals game last week. It was those James Conner runs that gave them the opportunity to win that football game. There were times when I was watching it down the stretch in the fourth quarter where they were handing the ball off to James Conner. I'm like, what are you doing? Why? Like, in situations where I felt like the ball, which would have been much better served in Kyler Murray's hand, and then
he was
Conner was able,
them.
Conner was able to get yards after contact and a first down and explosive runs, and I was like, all right, sure, I guess, it worked out for you. And to me, that, not to take anything away from James Conner, who's I think one of the more underrated backs in the league, it speaks volumes of the 49ers defensive line and how when it mattered most and when you really wanted to force a team into passing situations, they were still able to continue to run the ball against you at a really high clip. And that's not good for the Niners.
Yeah, I agree. I think part of the reason why I think Grubb has been reluctant to do it because some of the negative runs have scared him. The offensive line is not good at pass protecting. They're not good at run blocking. And his thinking as well, I've got a quarterback who's bailed us out of bad pass protection a lot. So I'm just going to kind of, it's like when you have a good quarterback play in spite of bad offensive line play, sometimes you just get like dependent on that a little bit. But I think something you saw certainly against Detroit is, yes, they had a lot of negative runs in the first half, but then you saw, okay, wait, as this game is going along, you've seen this actually in a couple games, they do start blocking the run a little bit better. And I feel like what you've seen is how run blocking can help an offensive line. It's very, very difficult to pass protect for an entire game. And I think he has to get like a better feel for that. Exactly. That like sometimes calling runs isn't just about trying to get 5 yards. It's about helping your offensive line out a little bit and just giving your quarterback a little bit of a break. So I think that's going to be key in this one. I don't feel the same way as I did the last few years where I feel like absolute existential dread facing this team because I just don't think they're as good. However, I don't like the matchup of this offense against Seattle's defense. I think Seattle has a chance to score on them, but I am still picking San Francisco in this, in what, Nick Bosa has characterized as a must-win game.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to sort of like I was saying, like, can the guys along Seattle's defensive front actually rattle Brock Purdy? Because it does not happen very often. I mean, again, we saw last week against Arizona, there were plays where the 49ers offensive line got beat, and then Purdy just does that thing where he keeps retreating, and then, just very calmly going to throw the ball away, and we're going to go to second down or third down or whatever it is. And the only one who's really been able to get after him in that regard was Flores when they played the Vikings. And it's like, okay, well, can you rattle him in those ways with a dominant defensive line performance? Because if not, like you mentioned, some of the injuries that they're going through on the defensive side of the ball, that could really hurt them against a obviously elite Niners pass catching unit.
Are you on San Francisco or Seattle?
You know what? I'm gonna say Seattle because I'm gonna say Seattle in this one because I think they're gonna play pretty pissed off from what happened last week when it just was not a game that went well for them at all whatsoever.
Really
and
bad.
the divisional matchup anyways, primetime TV, like I think like you mentioned, so not only does Seattle have some guys beat up, but so do the 49ers. Yeah. And so I'm going to go with Seattle in this one.
Okay. I like it. Let's do Jags Bears. Both coming off of wins. The Jags get off the schneid. The Bears are starting to build a little bit of momentum. Schedule gets a little softer. Quarterback gets a little more comfortable. I'm on the Bears side of this. You're on the Jags. I'll go first. I wrote, can Caleb Williams punish them with explosive passes and also creating with his legs? Dude, this Jags defense is not good. This is not good. And there's a litany of reasons for that. They do get back Tyson Campbell, which is they really, really need cornerback help. They're bad again in everything. They're really, really bad. What the weirdest thing is, like, even last week I was like, whoa, it feels like you watch them and like Josh Hines-Allen is making plays and Trevon Walker looks good. And then you're like, wait, but they're 31st in pass rush win and 26th in pressure. Like, there's still no one else is doing anything up front. And that's going to be, massive for a quarterback who we've seen now when he's actually not pressured, looks a little bit more like the number one overall pick we expected. But the other thing that they're very, very bad at is QB mobile quarterbacks. In fact, they've given the most given up the most EPA per carry to quarterback runs of any team in the entire NFL. They are ranked near the bottom of the league in just about every metric when quarterbacks are capable of throwing on the move. So I feel like there's just a ton of potential here for Williams, who, is starting to feel himself a little bit and put out some really good tape the last couple of weeks, to keep building on that, because this matchup is very favorable for him through the air.
Yeah, I agree. And just, you're right. It felt like the Jags defense was coming together as a unit a lot better last year than what they are this year. And I think that Yeah, Trayvon Walker had a career day last week, but we've sort of seen splash games from him before. I don't know how consistent that's going to be. You got Josh Hines Allen, and obviously it's much needed anytime that you can put Tyson Campbell back in this lineup because the safeties really struggled last week. I just think that they've really struggled to cover overall without him there, and it just doesn't feel like it's enough on the defensive side of the football for the Jags right now. So I do think that that's a very interesting matchup with what Caleb Williams is coming off of playing the Carolina Panthers versus the Jags, because I think the Jags are naturally a step up because unfortunately for Carolina, I think Carolina's got the worst defense in the NFL. And so,
Yeah.
like you said, like Caleb's kind of feeling himself. Caleb's like, all right, this NFL stuff might be kind of easy, but last week was his highest time to throw average that he has had yet in the NFL. Every single game before last week, he had a time to throw average below 3 seconds. Last week, it was 3.44. So he felt very comfortable because it was just like the USC days. And we saw him carve up the Carolina Panthers because of it. He can't keep doing that stuff even against the Jags defense that we said we wish was better. It's more suitable than Carolina's defense is. So we'll see how he is able to respond.
So the Jags are also coming off of their best performance of the year, best offensive performance by Trevor Lawrence against what is now, I think, pretty clearly a bad Colts defense as well.
Yeah.
What is the key? What do you have for them against this Bears team?
Well, they're going up against a really good Bears secondary, one that is third in the NFL as a team in coverage in our PFF grading. They're second overall with just DBs. So if you just make that the corners and the safeties, they're second in the NFL in coverage grades. So it's a good group back there. But I think for the Jags, the patience that they showed last week and more the maturity of their offense, I think is a big selling point for me of whether or not they're able to win the game. They were an extremely aggressive team last season. It's what made the Brian Thomas Jr. selection for them in the first round just fit like a glove. Because when you looked at passes that traveled 20 or more yards, they were top 10, if not top 5 in total attempts, completion percentage, big time throws, and touchdowns. It's just what they wanted to do on offense. They wanted to let it rip. And they go out and they sign Gabe Davis and they sign Brian Thomas Jr. And even when you look this year, Lawrence, 11 completions of 20 or more yards. That is tied for first in the NFL with Sam Darnold, of course, as all we expect, as everyone expected before the season began. And he has 414 passing yards on such throws, which is first in the NFL. So this is still the Jags' identity. But it brings up an interesting conversation with the one win they just had last week. Because last week, 6.7 average depth of target for them, lowest of the season. Only 3 passes of 20 or more yards in a single game, tied for their season low. 62.3% of their yards came after the catch. The previous high was 36.8. So Lawrence has been trying to do all of it with his arm previously. And this past game, certainly when you look at, the Christian Kirk bomb throw, the Brian Thomas Jr. big throw, those were sort of blown coverages. Or the Kirk one, I'll kind of tip my hat to Press Taylor a little bit because it was the perfect call against quarters. And the Brian Thomas Jr. one, it was a bit of a cover 3 beater that the Colts just played poorly anyways. So I think those things go into account. But the Jags, however it came about, it was the perfect blend of, okay, take your shots when they're there. But other than that, you don't have to throw it 50, 40 yards every single play. You don't always have to look for the home run shot. So the patience of the Jags, can the Jags passing offense be patient enough for this offense to run as smoothly as it did last week against the Indianapolis Colts? To me, that's their key to victory.
When I think about Trevor Lawrence and the season, this half of the season where he was playing the best football of his career, the year that they beat the Chargers, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the postseason, the comeback. But that second half of the season, it looked a lot more like it did this week, where the ball was coming out really quick. And you mix in the occasional shot play, but I think he's the kind of quarterback, it's funny, it kind of almost reminds me of what I was saying about like offensive lines generally, where like he has to get into a rhythm, otherwise his accuracy suffers. And I think thus far this season, prior to that, he never really got into that rhythm. I think it was like a little bit too boom or bust, the offense. And then you weirdly saw his short and intermediate passing suffer. To me, like that should be the meat and potatoes of what he does. And you have Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis, and you're going to have explosives built in, but you can't get like drunk on explosives, I feel
Right.
like, because of the type
Right.
of quarterback he is. Because when he has like when he's playing in rhythm, he has like a really, really nice quick release. And I actually think they still have the types of playmakers who are good for that type of offense, right? Like this should be an offense where you get lots of yards after catch, like you did last week. That's especially important against the Bears defense. It's just not giving up a lot in deep passes generally.
Mhm.
Weirdly, this Bears defense, though, has been last year they were the best run defense in the NFL. They've actually been a little bit down against the run this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tank Bigsby, whose ascent also, I think it's no coincidence that's another important factor in here. Wouldn't be surprised if they lean a little bit more on him in this one.
And that would make sense. And especially because it's an interesting matchup because not only is the Bears secondary good just overall in coverage, they're aggressive. Like they've got
Yeah.
5 interceptions. They have 2 dropped interceptions, so they could have 2 more. They have a decent amount of forced incompletions. I think they're top half of the league in forced incompletions. So if Jacksonville wants to play this game where they go back to just big game hunting deep down the field, like not only could that prove to not be consistent enough to be on the field enough, and I think third down conversions is a big reason. Their low third down conversions this year is a big reason for that. They're just not used to those smaller passes to convert those third downs. Chicago will make them pay. Like Chicago will take those and okay, not only are these inconsistent and they're not catches, we're
Yeah.
turning them into turnovers. They'll go get the ball out of the air. So I think that's a dangerous part of this too, and just more of a requirement for the Jags to, like you said, maybe utilize running the ball a little bit more and just being a little bit more patient on offense.
I'm on Chicago in this one because I think they have the best unit in this, and that's the Bears defense. And I think the Jags have the worst unit, which is their defense. So
I would also be on the Bears in this one. Yeah.
okay, Bucs Saints. Little bit of a plot twist on the Saints side. That's my side. I guess we should start there because it is the news. So Derek Carr, I don't know if it's been confirmed exactly what's going on, but he is not does not appear to be playing in this game. I've been trying to follow this today to see if it's going to be Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. And it seems to be trending in the direction of #the agenda. I am seeing, which we have talked about on this podcast. Shout out to the Saints Block Party podcast. I believe they are the originators of the agenda. This just makes this game so much more interesting to me if he's playing, because I think he's a fascinating player. He is also, I think, possibly a better fit for this Saints offense. Now, something we've talked about, sort of the decline of the Saints offense over the last few weeks from what we saw in the first 2 weeks. And something I think I've been remiss in not mentioning is what how massive the loss of their center has been, and how much that has clearly affected them, and how Derek Carr, once again, you see with pressure, he's just a totally different quarterback. So I think, the biggest challenge, if it is Rattler in this, or if it is Haener, frankly, is, okay, you got Todd Bowles' defense against a rookie quarterback or an untested quarterback. If it's Haener.
Yeah.
What's your plan? Do you come into this with Rattler, like Clint Kubiak? Are you going to find ways to mitigate some of their pressures, to allow the Saints to dictate on offense instead of being dictated to, which is really how I felt watching them against the Chiefs?
Mm-hmm.
Can you find ways to run the ball against a Bucs defense that's a little bit more vulnerable? I think you can speak more to this, particularly on runs outside the tackles. That's what I would do if I was New Orleans. It's going to be really interesting if it is him. So that's my feeling about Rattler. I mean, do you have you're a draft guy, like, do you have any feelings about the agenda or Rattler in general? Are you optimistic, excited, intrigued, nervous, a little frightened?
No, I think that I think the Saints fans should be cautiously optimistic about this one. And obviously, if it is Rattler making his first start, there's a difference between seeing a handful of really good preseason plays, which we did from him, and playing a full regular season game against a divisional opponent. So I think that is worth noting. But I will say this about Rattler: I don't think that he got the credit that he deserved from the maturity in his game over the 2 years in which he was at South Carolina. And I think it was shocking to me that he was picked in the 5th round. I'm not normally a draft a quarterback on day 2 kind of a guy, because the way that I feel about it is, okay, did you like him enough to be a first round pick or not? And if you didn't, then Is he probably going to be a starter for you? No. So at that point, you're probably just more, it's probably better for you to just wait to draft one until day 3. So I don't really label quarterbacks day 2 quarterbacks. It's just sort of hard for me to justify that. Rattler was the one last year who I would have said somebody should take this guy on day 2 and day 3 because there's an explainable reason why he would be a day 2, day 3 quarterback, given the history with him at Oklahoma and how he played behind such a terrible offensive line at South Carolina. So it's like you can understand why the production wasn't totally there for him. But I felt like the maturity in his game, and honestly, just from knowing people in the South Carolina football program who talked about him very highly while he was there, the maturity of him as a dude. So I was really very shocked when he was drafted as late as he was in the 5th round. And I'd love to see him get a shot. I think Hayner's a fun gamer as well. So whoever starts, it'll be fun. But if Rattler does play, if that Rattler does start, I have faith that Clint Kubiak's going to have a really good game plan to get this rookie quarterback feeling confident early on, even against a divisional opponent.
How do you feel about Tampa? So Tampa, your Tampa is your account.
It is indeed.
You got Tampa in this. What is the key for you?
Kalijah Cansey was a full participant in practice in the middle of the week here, and that is huge for them because, Vita Vea, obviously everybody knows about Vita Vea anyways, but Kalijah Cansey and what he could do as a pass rusher is very, very important for this team, particularly in this matchup against the Saints' depleted interior offensive line. You mentioned they're without Eric McCoy, their center. They're also down Cesar Ruiz, Lucas Patrick, who was having a really good start to the season at guard. He's been forced to kick in at center at times, then move back to guard. They're playing Oli Udoh. They're playing Nick Saldiveri, who they made the change with going into halftime because they didn't like the results. They're also playing Landon Young. It's a mess. When you looked at last week's game against the Kansas City Chiefs, which admittedly, Chris Jones, tough opponent. I understand that.
They were
they're
5-2 him.
Their interior offensive line, the Saints' interior offensive line, so just the guards in the center, 29.0 blocking grade last week, worst in the NFL. 21.4 pass blocking grade last week, for 32nd in the NFL, and 13 pressures allowed from just those 3 players, the most in the NFL last week. If the Bucs get Kalijah Cansey back, not saying Kalijah Cansey's Chris Jones, not trying to say that, but that wreaks havoc, especially on an inexperienced quarterback of either Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. When you can get interior penetration fast, which Cansey can do, that can wreck an entire game plan. It's why those interior guys get paid the money that they do. And him being a full participant is huge for this team this week, especially.
One thing I do like in this one for the Saints is on the other side of the ball. I think Baker Mayfield's been good this year. He is particularly good when that ball is coming out quickly and he is not pressured, right? And we saw that against Philadelphia. We saw that against Atlanta, which has negative pass rush. So the Saints defense, truly negative. The Saints defense is actually second in EPA per play versus quick game in the entire NFL. That secondary is like a band of vultures out there. And by the way, against Kansas City, I thought they were hurt at times because Patrick Mahomes is a magician and is able to extend and things go on long and Paul Senadebo starts grabbing people and whatever. But Baker can scramble, no doubt. And he's been fine under pressure. I'm not going to say he's been terrible under pressure. It's not true, but he is really good when the ball is coming out quickly. And I actually think that's an area where the Saints defense could, which is, I still think is very good. I know that the Chiefs kind of just had their way with them. I think that could be a little bit interesting for Baker, right? Because the Saints pass rush has looked better than they did certainly the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, that was the thing about, again, Kansas City, like Chase Young was getting home. It just didn't matter because it was Mahomes.
Never does. It never does.
But it might matter in this one.
Right. No, I think that's a really good point. And obviously we are blessed enough to have Marshawn Lattimore healthy. So we get whatever is the, 5th or 6th Rocky movie between him and Mike Evans teeing off. And I think that I'm glad that you brought up the Saints defensive back group, because I do think that a brood of vultures is a great way to explain how they swarm to the ball. This is an aggressive unit with all of their corners and their safeties as well. And they're going up against a Bucks offense that is really confident in the passing game. Baker has a ton of confidence in whoever he is throwing the ball to, specifically the top two studs in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And so that really is, when you look at this matchup, that's the big on big. That's the best on best. It's the Saints defensive backs going up against the Bucks wide receivers.
Always.
And we haven't always been able to say that, just like because due to injuries over the last couple of years and just sort of like where these teams are and how they're feeling. These are two of the best units on the team right now. And so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Sorry, I think is that a rattler sound? News just broke. Hashtag the agenda. It's happening.
Oh,
the
baby.
rattler is starting. Let's go.
You love the timing of it. You love the timing of it here on the show.
Just found out. Okay. Since now it's confirmed. Listen, I want to be like, again, this Bucks pass rush is fierce. The blitz is scary. Corners are good. I think for Kubiak, got to find a way to get back to the play action pass, which they've gone away from last couple of weeks. You got to find a way to, as you said, that interior D-line against the Saints interior offensive line. Listen, after what Spencer Rattler played through in college, that South Carolina offensive line, famous last words, I don't know how he could be in a worse situation than that, but that was college. This is the NFL. But he is certainly accustomed to playing behind terrible offensive lines. You got to find a way to put him on the move. He can throw really well on the move. I'm just saying, if Chris Olave goes off for like 90 yards in this one after only getting Chris Olave's brother or whoever, one of his family members was tweeting about it. I just want one thing. I just want that family member to tweet hashtag the agenda. That's all I want.
I feel like at this point in time, you want everybody to tweet hashtag the agenda. No, but it makes this matchup fun. But I keep going back to, if Kancey's able to eat against this interior, it's going to be hard for it to matter, because I agree with you completely. The fact that Rattler played behind such a bad South Carolina offense for 2 straight years, it gives him this experience to know. And again, that's something that I don't feel like he got enough credit for as a prospect.
Yeah.
He stayed calm under a ton of pressure. So he's not unfamiliar with it, but there is a difference with how bad the Saints were on the interior last week. It can't be that bad to give him a chance.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the Bucks, but
yeah, same.
But my heart wants the agenda. Sure. Okay. Colts Titans. You're the only one on this one. You can be quick.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually have a pretty interesting stat for this one, which I think is an interesting one. I'll shout out very quickly the fact that Will Fries is now out for the season. And that kind of sucks because he was one of the highest graded guards that we had in football. And this Colts offensive line is really good. Tanner Bortolini, the rookie, he could potentially move over to that right guard spot. And so we'll see. And so I think that kind of offensive line chemistry might mean a lot. Depends if Ryan Kelly's going to be back. So I wanted to say that. But my real X factor here in this one is the fact that over the last 2 weeks, the Indianapolis Colts have been emphasizing Josh Downs in the passing game from the slot. And he has been fantastic for them. 88.2 receiving grade over the last 2 weeks, 151 receiving yards, 35.6 threat percentage, which for people who aren't familiar with PFF, threat percentage simply is the percentages of which you are targeted for the routes you run. So how much is the team emphasizing you when you are out on the field running a route? So Josh Downs, number one on his team in all of those categories. They are emphasizing him heavily from the slot. The Tennessee Titans, fewest passing yards allowed to slot receivers this season. So they seem to know how to play it pretty well. I don't know if Josh Downs specifically is a player that they have gone up against his caliber, but if they can stop that part of the passing attack for the Indianapolis Colts, then it could get a lot more even between these two teams if Will Levis, isn't throwing catastrophic interceptions. So that's the key matchup that I wanted to highlight for this one.
Yeah, I also have a cool stat. 4. That's the number of Will Levis meme pictures I have in my reaction folder right now. Hoping that gets to 5. No, I'm not. I want him to play well. But you highlighted the really interesting matchup, which is the Colts offense versus the Titans defense. The Titans defense is good. That's what kind of is such a bummer about this season for Tennessee is their defense is playing well. They're not perfect, but they're 9th in DVOA, 6th in EPA per play, 2nd in success rate. It's interesting because they're not like getting a ton of pressure per
Right.
se, but like a lot of the vets are playing well. Harold Landry has been excellent. I think the spine of the defense is reasonably good too, and like Awuzie has been fine. You know, like they're good defense. And it does feel like if they were getting more consistent and competent offensive play, that they would be absolutely in the mix in the AFC South. I do think they'll be able to run the ball in Indianapolis because Indianapolis truly cannot stop the run this year. But yeah, that's a great matchup with the slot. I mean, the return of Josh Downs is such a big deal. Like, I really feel like his absence was something that was kind of overlooked early in the season. And I don't know what the hell's going on with AD Mitchell. I should get to that at some point, but I don't feel like doing it today. It's not great. Okay, let's get to the main event. Is Commanders Ravens the game of the weekend?
Oh yeah, yes, 100%, 100%. It's the game of the week.
Let's finish here and then take a break and then do the rest. We are doing this game in full. You are on Washington. I am in Baltimore. I mean, I don't have MVP odds in front of me, but I'm guessing Daniels and Jackson are up there right now. Certainly, they're being compared to each other. They're both being like, no, they're using his own man. You know, like I'm not talking about it. The other thing is like the both of these quarterbacks, these offenses match up very well with both these defenses, because the Ravens defense has been really a letdown this year. They've been up and down is the weird thing. So it's like, it's not like they've just been like crappy. Like there's like, for example, against Buffalo, they were awesome. And there's moments where they look good again, but then they've been actually, I mean, statistically, they've just been really bad. I'm going to focus on the offense though, because my key for Baltimore is just, can you control this game on the ground? Because they can. I really think they can. And, you know, this Washington team, like you want to put them in a position where they are throwing the ball, right? Like where they are playing from behind, where they are not able to do the same thing, frankly, control the game with their ground, because their ground game is amazing. It might be the second best behind Baltimore. I don't have it in front of me. But the thing that jumps out to me about the Ravens offense against the Commanders defense is I just think matchup wise, what the Ravens are doing with their heavy personnel groupings right now, when they put multiple tight ends, backs on the field, I just don't know how the Commanders handle that. I mean, the Commanders versus 12 personnel and the Ravens personnel groupings are all a little bit wonky because of Ricard. They almost exclusively play nickel 99% of the time this year. They haven't played a ton of teams using multiple backs. If you play the Ravens in nickel and 12, they are happy to run that ball down your throat. In fact, in 12 personnel, they are averaging 6 yards a carry and 0.24 EPA per play. So it's a real problem. And by the way, if Washington does add a linebacker, they're totally happy to throw out of those looks too, as we've seen. I mean, they are. I've harped on this with the Ravens, but I really think it's worth emphasizing. I love their 12 personnel grouping so much because they are almost, this year and last year, they are an even run pass split, and they're constantly putting defenses in compromised situations. But I think particularly running the ball out of those looks, is going to be a huge problem for Washington.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, it was an intriguing note of Washington's draft class when they drafted Dominique Hampton and Tyler Owens, who are sort of these bigger, really good athlete, safety / linebacker hybrid prospects, because they draft both of those guys after also signing Jeremy Chin. So it's like, you have these hybrid players to do exactly what you're talking about, right? Where the Ravens, when they want to go heavy personnel and pass out of the heavy personnel, you'd be able to put multiple safety / linebacker hybrid players into the game to be okay at run defense, but then also a plus in coverage about how you go about covering these guys. Unfortunately, they are still late drafted rookies, so they're not going to play a big part of this game plan for them this year. So you could kind of see the vision from Dan Quinn, but those guys aren't ready yet. And instead, I think that you're right. I think the Ravens, at least on the ground, are going to have their way with the Commanders defense.
Well, you get some good news because you're on the Commander side, and if you talk about the other side of the ball, I think you're also going to have some favorable matchups for the offense.
Yeah, specifically, there is one area of Jaden Daniels' game which I am so impressed with right now, which actually bodes very, very well in this matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, and that is how he is throwing on the run, specifically in scramble situations. Now, this was not an element of his game last year. For as amazing as his Heisman Trophy season was, as much as he ran the ball plenty, him getting out of the pocket and then keeping his eyes up to throw, he only did it 15 times last year.
I literally looked up that exact stat last week because people were like, yeah, and he was really good at this college. I was like, no, I mean, it wasn't that he wasn't good at it, but he
never did it.
Do it in college.
No, never did.
He did
never
not do it. He was 99th in attempts on throwing on the run. So I didn't know if he could do it, and boy, can he do it.
And that was a thing about, when I listen to people, not calling anybody out or anything whatsoever, but like when I listen to people get into, draft season where they go like, oh, Jaden Daniels, he's going to be great throwing on the run in the NFL. In my mind, I would immediately go, maybe, but he didn't do it at LSU. He didn't do it last year. Yeah. And so that's the unlocked key that he has had this season about his game. He's already a great runner, right? He's already great throwing deep down the field. You could tell he's very confident in all sorts of passes. He's got great energy. He's playing the game at a very high fun level, but it's that area of passing on scramble plays that is unlocking everything. Because when you look at him right now, he's the number one graded quarterback in the NFL when it comes to throwing the ball in scramble situations. He's got 2 big-time throws. He's 8 for 7. But more importantly, in scramble situations, he leads the NFL with 16 first downs. That could be passing or running. So when he gets out of the pocket, he is a true dual threat player that is unbelievably hard to game plan for. And specifically, when you categorize how the Ravens have covered quarterbacks in scramble situations, they have a 57.6 coverage grade as a team against quarterbacks that scramble outside of the pocket. That's 24th best in the NFL. And they have given up 6 plays of 15 yards or more. So those big plays, which are the second most in the NFL. So this is an area where Jaden is playing at a very high level when he gets out of the pocket, and the Ravens are really struggling against quarterbacks that do that. And that's kind of ironic because they have someone in practice that could probably do that every single play, but they're not
out of sorts right now.
Not only are they not great at defending it, they give up the big plays too. And that's the part that would worry me if I was a Ravens fan, but it's something to really look forward to. And how, in my opinion, how the Commanders can win this game.
Just to go back to Daniels for a second. So yeah, I was grabbing all those numbers, right? Because I was like, this is crazy what he's doing. I don't think you guys he was misrepresented a little bit coming out of college, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And so right now he's second in QBR throwing on the move behind, at least I checked it on Sunday, maybe it changed on Monday, but he was behind only CJ Stroud, who was another quarterback who we didn't know if he could do that coming out of college. It just goes to show you, just because a quarterback isn't really, he only put it on tape, obviously, against Georgia. That was the infamous debate about him. But sometimes they just need the opportunity to show it. Yeah, so I'm with you on that. I think that they will be able to move on the ball on them. The reason I'm taking Baltimore in this is the Commanders are bad against both the pass and the run, and the Ravens are actually very good against the run. And I think that might be their saving grace in this game because this Commanders offense does love to run the ball. And I think the stoutness of that front seven, particularly the interior, the edges are also playing good. Mm-hmm. I think could end up being the difference in a few drives.
Yep, I agree with you. I would also take the Ravens in this one. Like you mentioned at the top, it's game of the week type of matchup. It's going to be fun. Everybody should watch it, but I would also take the Ravens.
All right, let's take a quick break, come back, and we'll talk about a different rookie quarterback making his first start. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, we are back. The quarterback that I'm alluding to, there's no hashtag for him. Hashtag mother may I? Hashtag may he survive this game? That's my question. It's Texans Patriots. I'm on the Patriots. Literally, that's the key to the game. Drake May, don't get killed. I am scared. And I'm high on May, and I really enjoyed watching him in college. And he also played behind a bad offensive line in college, and that matters. But oh boy, he's facing a Texans pass rush that pressured Caleb Williams on 48% of his dropbacks, and he's playing behind a worse offensive line that just lost their starting center. I would love to look stupid and for him to come out and ball out and this not to be a thing. That is my hope. However, I do not understand the timing here. I mean, I realize that if you have a bad offensive situation, which the Patriots do, trying to like find the perfect moment is kind of silly. But like, you got the Jags just around the corner.
Right.
You know, the Jags just in tight. Like, do you really have to do it now, Terod Mayo? In any case, my only hope is just like put him on the move. See if you can run the ball in this one, more play action, more under. You know, I don't know. It's not great.
I guess it's just they're at home thing, and they want the crowd to come out and see their franchise quarterback because, like you said, I mean, there's not really. I mean, I don't know if it couldn't be worse timing, but certainly you're losing David Andrews, like you mentioned. You're already second worst in the NFL with 83 pass pressures allowed, 48.5 PFF pass blocking grade as a team that's third worst, and you're going up against the Texans pass rusher that has two guys in Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter who aren't bad at football. So I don't think there's going to be a quote unquote perfect time to play Drake May, but for me it must just be, hey, fans are losing interest in this team this season. We're at home. Just play him. Maybe it's an owner thing. Like maybe it's a Robert Kraft thing. I don't really know. It's sort of head scratching, and I'm with you. I just hope that Drake survives.
D'Amico, I also feel like he's been a little more aggressive this season. I think they're going to blitz the out of him in this game. Anything for the Houston Texans, who are, I assume we are both anticipating win this one?
Yeah, I have them winning this game. Obviously with Nico Collins going to the IR, I think that that's something at least to monitor. Maybe not in this game because I think it should be relatively easy for them to win. Well, I should not say easy. That's insulting to the NFL, but it should be a game that they win. I think Tank Dell's performance in this one will be telling because Dell and Stroud do not have the connection that they had last year, and even when he's been out in the field and healthy, like last season. 24% threat percentage, 3.8 83.8 receiving grade, 2.32 yards per route run. That was all last year for Tank Dell. It's less in every single category. 15.9% threat percentage. It's almost 10% less. It's just a 61.6 receiving grade and just a 1.02 yards per route run average. It's just down in every category, and there's a lot of mouths to feed, especially with Nico Collins playing the way he does, and then you move for Stephon Diggs. He's going to get involved in the offense. It was sort of natural to think that, okay, maybe Tank Dell doesn't have quite those numbers. Do they pop back up to what they were in 2023 without Nico Collins? Because if so, then I still think that this could be a pretty potent passing attack.
Could end up being also sneaky important to see in this game because Christian Gonzalez has been absolutely locking people down. And I just think they're going to put him on Stephon Diggs. So you might actually need one of those, whether it's Dell or Schultz or whoever, you might need one of those other pass catchers to produce. Okay, so we're both on the Texans. Prayers up for Drake May. Cardinals Packers. Interesting game. You are on the Cardinals, coming off of a win over the San Francisco 49ers. What do you have as a key for them?
Their offensive line, which is sneaky playing decently well, I think needs to continue to play well, specifically against this Packers defensive line, which has been bad. Disappointment so far throughout this season. 71.0 pass blocking grade for the Cardinals offensive line. That's 12th in our system. Only 43 pressures allowed. That's 11th best in our system. So I think that the Cardinals offensive line has not probably gotten the credit that it deserves there. And anytime that you give Kyler Murray the appropriate amount of time, I mean, he can carve you. He's an extremely talented quarterback, and he's shown that throughout a couple of points in this season. He's also had what was the game that he absolutely went off? Who were they playing?
Rams.
That was insane though. It might be the highest single game grade that we give all year long. It's either that or what Jaden Daniels did to the Cincinnati Bengals. I can't imagine that anybody's going to have a higher grade than those two, but we've seen Kyler Murray do it already this season. The offensive line's been able to block well for him. Hernandez goes down, so they're going to have to mitigate that. But the Packers pass rush specifically, this is a unit that you should still play really well against.
Yeah.
Their pass rush grade, 25th in the NFL. Their pass rush win percentage is 25th. Their total pressures is 21st. And Rashawn Gary specifically on pace for career lows in pass rush grade, pass rush win percentage, pressures, and sacks. And it's just like, that to me is, if the Cardinals offensive line does what they should do, they got a good chance to win this game. And I think this is a matchup that's in their favor.
I think part of the problem is I kind of feel the same way about Green Bay though against Arizona. Like I feel that I agree with everything you said, but my note for the Packers was, can Jordan Love just play clean football? Because
Yes. Yes.
from a matchup perspective, they also have an advantage, offense versus defense, right?
Mhm.
Cardinals defensive line, talking about the Packers defensive line, they're not getting pressure either, right? Up front. And Darius Robinson, their first round draft pick, was activated, but I don't know if he's playing. Regardless, it would be his first game. They're 32nd in pass rush win, 28th in pressure rate. They're bad against the run. They're bad against they're bad against play action. They're bad against the run. Like they all of the easy buttons that Matt LaFleur can press in this game should work. So I think it's just a matter of like Jordan Love playing within himself.
Yep.
He doesn't have to be super aggressive in my mind for Green Bay to move the ball in this team.
Yep. It's such a roller coaster with Love, who over the last 2 weeks tied for the fifth most turnover worthy plays, but also tied for the fifth most passing yards. So it's
Yeah.
like it's truly the massive Jordan Love roller coaster right now. And I agree with you. If Love plays within himself, I'm taking the Packers in this game,
Hmm.
but it is a situation where if he's going to be up and down, and the pass rush can't get home against Kyler Murray, I mean, I'll take that quarterback. But I feel like what LaFleur is going to bring to the table, especially with them being at home, I do give the Packers a slight edge, especially because the last time that they were at home, I don't think they weren't at home. No, because they were in LA last week. So the last time that they were at home, it was that Vikings game where it was like they started off really terribly and then they came back with a vengeance. And I don't know. I feel like they're going to be at home. They're going to be really focused to get a win. And I think it's going to give them a little bit of an edge there.
Yeah, I think both teams will be able to run the ball on each other too, by the way, Connor
Yes.
and Josh Jacobs, I think. So that makes this was actually a little bit hard to project for me because of that. I kind of went back and forth. I am going to lean Green Bay as well, just because I think, I feel like Jordan Love's still kind of finding his sea legs this season, and I think we might see that start to click a little bit. Chargers is Broncos. So I did this game in full because I feel like I haven't talked about obviously the Chargers had a bye, but I just kind of haven't given them the attention that they deserved. However, I'm on the Broncos, who are at home in this one. So look, earlier in this week, Dominic Fox and I talked about the Broncos defense and how incredible by the way, this is like a defensive rock fight because
Yes.
both of these
Yes.
defenses are playing really well. Listen, okay. I'm going to take the L now on the Chargers defense. They are so much better than I thought they would be. However, the competition they did play the Chiefs, but like this is my key for Denver. I'm staying away from the defensive side of it. I'm curious to see if they can run on the Chargers because the Chargers run defense has been excellent, but they haven't played any like really good rushing teams. Kansas City ran the ball pretty well on them. And I feel like the Broncos finally got things going last week against Las Vegas. Javonte Williams, 13 carries, over 60% success rate. So this is a run game that has been worse this year than last year and doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like if they can get it going a bit again this week, then the defense is good enough to win this.
Yeah, I did not realize this before I looked it up, that the Chargers were as good as they were on the defensive side of the football.
Crazy.
Because I went into this thinking like, oh yeah, Broncos defense. I mean, they're fantastic. Then I looked at the Chargers, just like, okay, 73.9 overall defensive grade in our system. That's eighth best in the NFL. Only 12.3 points allowed. That's first in the NFL for this Chargers team. And I know they're going through some injuries, but this is clearly a group that's playing really, really well. And the Jim Harbaugh factor of him coming in and just raising the floor so much higher for this team just goes to show what a great coach he is. And so, I understand that the Broncos are 3-0, and it's kind of funny because I felt like over the last 3 weeks, I've kind of been a bit of a Bo Nix defender. Like I've been like, it hasn't all been bad. I know people love the memes like LOL Bo Nix, but like he has actually done some good things, and there are some things in which he is improving, and at least he is trying to pass the ball deep down the field instead of like fearing doing it. So I've actually been sort of I don't want to say champion, but I've liked Bo Nix. Like I think that he has been playing fine, and he's been getting more criticism than he deserves. And I think that you have seen them obviously be able to put themselves in winning situations because of it. Look, we got a lot of numbers, we got a lot of data points, we look at a lot of different things. I'm going with the Chargers because of vibes. Like, I think the Chargers are just going to win this game because I don't know. I look at this game and I think it's a game that Jim Harbaugh is going to win. They're coming off a bye. They're ready for it. The Broncos offense specifically, even throughout the 3-game winning streak, they have the 4th fewest passing yards, the 3rd fewest passing touchdowns. They are 29th in completion percentage of just 10 yards or more. I mean, this is just not an explosive offense that you necessarily fear. And I think that Harbaugh and this team are going to be ready to clamp down on it. And as long as Justin Herbert's out there, I'm going to take the Chargers in what feels like an upset here with this one.
I worry if Surtain locks down McConkey. Who's Justin Herbert throwing to?
I mean,
I mean, Quentin Johnston's been better this year.
He has been.
I don't know. It's this offense. Both of these offenses are pretty up and down, or not pretty up and down, but like pretty out bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love Bo Nix against this Chargers defense either.
Right.
Like the simulator. You're not wrong to take Herbert because it's Herbert, Chargers. I'll go Denver, I guess, because I think the Denver defense is probably the best unit in this thing. But yeah. Whew. All right. Steelers Raiders is just me. We're gonna burn. We got a few just us, quicker games here. So there is news here. AOC is starting for the Raiders. Gardner Minshew has been benched. What a freaking waste of time. Honestly, just the whole thing is just like you've been wasting my time, Raiders. That's
Are you saying that because you've wanted AOC to start the whole time?
I both wanted AOC to start the whole time, but I also more than that. Not that I even think he's that great. I was just like, why are you signing Why are we doing this with Gardner Minshew? Right? Like, why are you paying him this much money? Why are you? It was just a waste of time. Kristen Wilkins is out in this one. Devontae Adams is not playing. So the Raiders, it just kind of feels like it sucks, but it's like October, and it just feels like they're already kind of calling it. So I'm on the Steelers. I feel like, because of that, this might be a play for your job moment for Justin Fields. So I think that's going to be sort of the key in this one, right? Can you get back on, like, whatever the hell's going on with George Pickens? Can they fix that in this game? I mean, the Raiders defense has been like really a letdown this year. There's been injuries. One thing the Raiders really can't do is defend tight ends. So I actually think this could be a big Pat Freiermuth game. But for me, this is just a really important game for Justin Fields, of all people.
I think this is a really important game just for the Steelers offense in general. And when I look at sort of like what's going to tell the tale of this game, Steelers better figure it out with George Pickens. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on in the locker room. Yeah. I don't understand, but he is their offense. He is their entire offense. So they got to figure it out or do something, because I was hoping that when Roman Wilson, their 3rd-round draft pick, got healthy, that he was going to be the cavalry for this wide receiver group. He's been a healthy scratch the last 2 weeks, so they're very comfortable not playing him. When you look at George Pickens, 25.8% threat percentage, no other wide receiver has a threat percentage above 12.5. It's not even close. Pickens has 13 first down catches. The rest of the whole team has 7. Pickens has 310 receiving yards this year. The rest of the team has 232. And yet last game, both Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson, all due respect, outsnapped George Pickens in that game. And afterwards, Mike Tom was like, nah, we just had him, in this rotation, like a defensive lineman. And I was not buying any of that. And it feels like there's something going on there. But
casual, take your number 1 wide receiver out of it.
Right. And it's like, and you can't even say, well, all right, we're not going to have George Pickens on the field because he might be an issue for us. And so let's run the ball more. They can't run the ball anymore.
Yeah.
They have the 3rd most rushing attempts in the NFL, and yet they're 23rd in EPA per rush. They're 23rd in yards after contact per attempt, and they're 27th in yards before contact. They already want to do it, and they can't do it. So if you don't figure it out with George Pickens, I don't know what you have at all in this offense. So that's where I'm at with the Steelers.
I think George Pickens is not allowed to wear his open effing always eye black. I think I saw something like that. So opportunity here for a vibe shift on his part. I'm taking the Steelers in this one because of everything Raiders gestures in the general direction of the Raiders. I assume you are too.
I am too. Even for everything that I just said, I feel like I have to take the Steelers in this one. Vegas is in a bad place.
Okay, speaking of people in a bad place, the Cleveland Browns play the Philadelphia Eagles. This is your game. The Cleveland Browns, there's no quarterback controversy because they're not moving on from their quarterback, at least not as of now. They've stood by Deshaun Watson. You could focus on the Eagles, who are coming off of a bye. Something that you feel like has to happen in this game.
The Eagles defensive line versus the Browns offensive line. It could just be a situation where, Jalen Carter becomes a one-man wrecking crew again, because this Browns offensive line for the last 3 years, we have talked about it as one of the best in the NFL, and it has been good. At its best, Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, Jedrick Wills when he's been playing well, Jack Conklin, Ethan Posick in the middle. Bunch of those guys are hurt. Conklin is hurt. Teller is hurt. Now Ethan Posick is hurt. Jedrick Wills came back from injury, but does not look good this season. They tried to play DeJuan Jones, and it has not worked out well whatsoever. The Browns offensive line this year, 54.8 PFF passing grade as a group. That's the second worst in the NFL. 49.6 pass blocking grade, which is fourth worst, and 57.4 run blocking grade. That is third worst. They can't pass block anybody. They can't push anybody in the run game, and they're going up against a defensive line with the Philadelphia Eagles that may not be as good as it has been in the past. But the Eagles have still drafted and prioritized the defensive trenches for a reason, because they want their floor as a defensive line to be a hell of a lot higher than almost every single team in the NFL. And that's what it is. And then obviously you got a superstar in Jalen Carter who could absolutely wreck the game by himself. So to me, that is the big key matchup in this one. For as much as I think the Eagles offense has certainly been shaky, the Browns has as well. And the Eagles, to me, have the defensive line to match up against the greatest weakness of the Browns' entire team, really, not even just the offensive side of the ball. So I'm going with Philadelphia in this one because Cleveland has shown me no faith that they can score enough points in this game.
Yeah, well said. The Eagles' offense is also getting healthier finally.
Yes.
Expected to have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Lane Johnson back. That said, I do not think they should or need to throw the ball like at a high rate. Prodigious rate, because they remain a very dominant rushing attack, and Cleveland's really struggled to defend the run, especially outside of, they stack the box at the highest rate. They do it for a reason, because when they don't, they cannot defend the run. So either, punish them on the ground, or if they stack the box, punish them with the play action pass. There's no reason why your offense shouldn't have success against defense that's really taken a step back this year, and I think also can be exploited in some pretty obvious ways on tape now through first 5 weeks of the season. All right, Lions Cowboys, better game.
Yep.
You're on the Lions. I'm on the Cowboys. You can go first. I just went. Or no, you just went. I'll go first. Okay, so the obvious thing is, like, can the Cowboys run defense of the last 2 weeks keep it going, right? I don't think so. So I'm not going to even, maybe you'll talk about that. I'm more interested in the Cowboys offense, because I think what we've seen with Detroit is that's probably your best chance. If you don't have a very good a good run defense, that's probably your best chance of keeping up with them.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote, can Dak Prescott beat the Lions man coverage? The Lions play a ton of man coverage. They press at a very high rate, and the Cowboys have somewhat struggled against that this year. They have struggled to get separation, but I was pretty encouraged, actually, by what I saw from the passing attack against a Pittsburgh defense that also plays a fair amount of man coverage. You finally saw players other than CeeDee Lamb getting open, and I thought Mike McCarthy actually did a decent job of scheming them open, which is to say the players, Kevontae Turpin, Jalen Tolbert, who scored the touchdown, Jake Ferguson had a huge day, and I really think there's something to build on there in terms of attacking some of these matchups in the Lions secondary that you've seen other good offenses do. Most recently, Seattle comes to mind. So I think that's like, if there's an opportunity here, rather, for the Cowboys offense to build on that. And that, to me, is the only way they stay in this one, because I just think this defense is going to really struggle against Detroit.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I can echo that point. Cowboys, 34 passes this year of 15 yards or more. That is second most in the NFL. And it's decently evenly distributed between CeeDee Lamb, who has 7, Tolbert, who has 6, and then Ferguson, who has 5. They're going up against the Lions secondary that has allowed 23 receptions to 15 yards or more. Carlton Davis has allowed 7 himself. Terran Arnold has allowed 6 himself. So it is an area where the Cowboys, at least like you said, if they have a clinging hope, it is to stay explosive in the passing game, and there's a chance that they could do that. With the Lions specifically, the matchup that matters is who they are on the ground, and they have a top 5 rushing grade as a team. They are top 3 in terms of EPA per rush, and they are going up against a defensive line that has the lowest EPA per rush allowed and the lowest rushing grade as a team through 5 weeks of the season. And so it is just a complete strength and what the Lions want to do versus one of the biggest weaknesses in the NFL. It's probably the biggest gap of strength versus weakness of any matchup that we're going to talk about here on this show. So I think that for the Lions, that has to be their key to victory there. And I think it's something that's going to be easy for them. Also, just want to shout out the fact that Aiden Hutchinson is also going up against Terrence Steele and Tyler Guyton, who are both bottom 10 in the NFL for offensive tackles and total pressures allowed. And this guy might rack up defensive player of the year this week if those guys don't get better.
I don't know how you guys graded it out. I actually thought they did okay against TJ Watt last week.
Let's see.
Yeah, maybe what's coming to mind is the final drive where they were able to help because Nick Herbig went out and they don't have didn't have a lot of help for TJ Watt in that.
They were better.
So it felt like I was actually a little impressed by Steele in that game. But it's a tough matchup. I'm going Detroit, because I think the improvements we've seen in Dallas's run defense have a lot to do with the competition they face. That said, at least they look competent, right? Because the first few weeks of the season, they looked like the worst run defense in the entire NFL. And I feel like, the problem is Detroit is one of the best rushing attacks in football. So it's just tough. Getting Deron Lambland back though, pardon me, huge in this one.
That is big. Yes. I'm going with the Lions as
well. So you got Falcons, Panthers.
Yes.
Divisional matchup.
So for this one's an interesting sort of matchup that matters here. I'll throw in the caveat by saying the Panthers have a bottom 3 defensive line when it comes to getting after the passer in pass rush grade, in pass rush win percentage, and I believe total pressures. So admittedly, what I'm about to say, it's a tall task to ask this of the Panthers defensive line. However, we all talk about Kirk Cousins as being somebody who can be pretty good under pressure, right? There have been times throughout his career where, he's somebody who understands, not that he's the most mobile guy in the world, but he knows where to go with the ball and he can certainly be all right versus. He knows how to play under pressure. And even though his passing grade under pressure isn't terrible this year, there is a very interesting stat with him. When you don't pressure Kirk Cousins, when he is kept clean, obviously every quarterback is better when they're kept clean, but Cousins specifically, only 1 turnover-worthy play when there is no pressure 5 weeks through the season. That's the best of any full-time starting quarterback in the NFL. So he's performing very, very well when he is not pressured. When you pressure him, 7 turnover-worthy plays. So we think of Kirk Cousins as like, okay, well, he's broken the PFF algorithm before with how well he plays under pressure and how he gets the ball out of his hands and things like that. He's got a lot of turnover-worthy plays under pressure this year. So if the Panthers can in any way, shape, and form get after him, maybe you can keep this a game, especially if Chuba Hubbard continues to play well with how well he's been rushing, which, by the way, there's only one running back in the NFL over the last 3 weeks who has more rushing yards than Chuba Hubbard, and it's Derrick Henry. So that just lets you know how well he is playing. If Carolina can stay balanced on offense and they can get after Kirk Cousins a little bit, maybe they can get an interception or 2 and keep this game somewhat close. Ultimately, I'm going with Atlanta, but that is my matchup there.
That is a great fact observation about Cousins, and one that will certainly factor in moving forward after this game, because I do not think the Carolina Panthers can pressure him. I think some of the other teams that they're facing, it'll matter. The Panthers defense is just so bad, man. They're so bad at everything. I mean, the thing that I looked up because I was curious, because I really liked seeing Drake London used in the slot last week, and I think he's so good on those in breakers. Is just looking at Carolina's defense between the numbers, it's just abysmal. I mean, they're just either worst, second worst in just about every category. I think their best chance of making this interesting is a shootout, like of the kind of week one, first time we saw Andy Dalton, pardon me, not week one, but his week one, because the Falcons defense can't get after the quarterback either. So there might be, I do think the Falcons defense just has enough players to limit him and to make it better. But yeah, I'm also on Atlanta. That defense is so bad.
Yep.
Okay, so there's 2 more games. Did I skip? No, the Rams.
No, I think you get 2.
Okay. Bengals Giants on its face seems awful, right? But the more I thought about it, the more I think this could be competitive. Because, and I'm on the Giants side of it, this Bengals defense stinks. And I actually think New York, not just last week against the Seahawks, but over the last, really much of the season, they've shown me enough to where I actually think that they can take advantage of some of the Bengals' the Bengals' many weaknesses. Honestly, the Bengals can't rush the passer, they can't defend the run, they're giving up. They're just bad at everything. One thing that I would highlight is I really think going to Tyrone Tracy, the rookie running back, is huge. I was really impressed with him, and also the run blocking generally against Seattle. Granted, Seattle run defense was bad, but it's not like the Bengals run defense is any better. I mean, they're arguably the worst in the NFL, depending on how you measure it. They're certainly bottom 3. And I think something that they're particularly bad at is runs outside the tackles. The cornerbacks just are not tackling. They're having a lot of trouble limiting explosives. And that was something I thought watching Tracy, I was like, ooh, this might be a problem for Cincinnati, as well as, of course, Daniel Jones on the occasional zone read thrown in. So I'm just saying, I think New York might be able to run on Cincinnati. And if that's the case, yeah, Joe Burrow's going to go crazy, but you could have another high scoring game.
Yeah, and that's certainly what the Giants are hoping for, right? And you've got a Giants defensive line that's playing even better than they have at the beginning of the season. I was pretty critical of them at the beginning of the season of hey, you drafted Kayvon Thibodeau as high as you did to play a lot better than he is. And you signed and you traded for Brian Burns to play a lot better than he is. But over the last couple of weeks, they have played better as a group. And this is a Bengals offensive line that you should be able to take advantage of again. But on the flip side of things, for the Bengals, it is simply the fact that we have gotten a taste over the last 2 weeks of what life is like with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins fully healthy in this offense. And it is an offense that can score 30 plus every single week. I'm going to take the Bengals in this game because I don't think the Giants can keep up.
Yeah.
Drew Phillips and his presence in this game could go a long way. Deontay Banks played well last week, so maybe they're able to cover them a lot better. But when you look at Jamar Chase, first in the NFL in yards after the catch, second in total receiving yards. T. Higgins has 13 catches gaining a first down, 4 contested catches himself, 2 catches gaining 15 yards or more. I mean, it is just a singing passing offense. And honestly, it's what makes the Bengals season so frustrating to watch is if you didn't sleepwalk against the New England Patriots at the beginning of the season, if your guys were fully healthy and Jamar Chase was out there for games 2 and 3, maybe those are different. If you don't go up against a nuclear Jaden Daniels, I guess maybe that should have been the different thing. But even then, they were throwing haymakers with them back and forth, and the same thing against Baltimore. And it's man, no matter how much they score, it feels like the defense just continues to let them down. And maybe that's the case again this week. But even with Tyrone Tracy, I don't think that it's potent enough to keep up with the Bengals, and so I am going to take the Bengals for that reason.
I don't either. I'm taking the Bengals, but the Cincinnati defense is allowing 29 points per game right now. The Giants defense is allowing, so it's actually second worst to the Panthers. The Giants defense is actually 11th, 20.8. Now, the Bengals offense is much better than the Giants offense, but I'm just saying that defense is so bad. Woof. Man, it's just a longer conversation. It's a bummer because there's so much cool stuff happening with the Bengals offense that I just feel like we're not really getting to because they're not relevant in the standings. And it's a real shame. All right, Bills Jets. The Jeff Ulbrich led New York Jets take on the Buffalo Bills. Both teams reeling. off of losses.
Mm-hmm.
One team still has their head coach, Sean McDermott. You're on that team. You're on Buffalo, who come to New York. I'm going to be in the Meadowlands for this one, by the way. We are NFL Live on site. Yeah, very exciting. I think this is going to be a good game. I'm actually very intrigued by it. What do you think the Bills have to do?
Khalil Shakir is going to play a big role in this game.
Mercifully, he is back. My God.
Right, because last week, it's hard to really look at last week and take a lot of things away from it because it was just the craziest outlier Josh Allen performance that we have seen since 2021. Like the completion percentage, but not even just the completion percentage. I mean, he had 15 total dropbacks under pressure. And this is Josh Allen, who is good under pressure, an alien under pressure, if you will.
Sometimes better under pressure.
15, right. It's like he needs to up the difficulty just to feel alive. 15 dropbacks under pressure last week against the Texans. 13 attempts, 0 completions.
That's
0.
Yeah.
He was 0 for 6 on passes of, and this is without pressure. This is just in general. He was 0 for 6 on passes of 20 or more yards. He was 1 for 14 on passes of 10 or more yards. It was the craziest, okay, that's not going to happen again. So what do you try to take away from that game? What I took away is the fact that it's not like those throws were all terrible, but it did feel like he didn't quite have that chemistry with those receiving options that he has with Khalil Shakir. It just didn't feel like he was trusting those players the same way, especially when it came to the overall air yards when the ball was getting to its target. It was just a little off left or right. It was a little off whether it was too far or too short. And with Khalil Shakir, I think it's been different this season. Shakir, highest quarterback rating when targeted, 144, not even close the highest in my opinion. Highest completion percentage when targeted, it's almost 85.7%. So this is the guy that Josh Allen has that connection with. Everybody else, he's still trying to figure it out. So for me, the key to victory is getting Khalil Shakir back because the floor for the passing game for the Bills has to be way higher than what it was last week. And unfortunately, it feels like it hinges on Shakir being there, but his presence is going to mean a lot in this one for that team.
Yeah, he is kind of like their Rashee Rice, not in how he's used, but in terms of the sneaky growing importance to the offense.
Yes.
And I too, I'm happy to write off the Josh Allen horrible. Look, it happened. It matters when we talk about him as a quarterback, but I just mean when we try to project who he is going forward, I don't think he's going to be that guy again. I do think, however, they do not have guys who separate on the outside.
Right.
That's just the build. And that is a problem against certain defenses. I think Shakir definitely changes that dynamic. And I think it's going to be massive, massive, massive to have him back. And we see that. But I am skeptical of this group of pass catchers. I do think they can run the ball in New York, though, by the way. Another
yes
aspect of this. So I'm on the Jets. And last week, ahead of Jets-Vikings, I was really I hate this matchup for New York. The Vikings defense is awesome for a number of reasons that we've talked about, that everybody's been talking about. But one of the things they're really, really good at is stopping quick game passes of 2.5 seconds or left. And that's a real problem for a Jets offense, that leans on that heavily. The good news for New York is the Bills are not great against it this year, against quick game. So the Vikings are the best in every metric. The Bills are 27th in success rate. They are allowing the third most yards after the catch in the NFL. Now they do get, I think, Taron Johnson back, which is huge in this game in particular too. So, but I do think that matchup is much more favorable to Rodgers, who we know wants to play quickly. I think this could be one where you do still need someone other than Garrett Wilson to make plays.
Sure,
maybe a big Mike Williams game. The Bills are much better against wide receiver ones than wide receiver twos. Benford's been amazing this year. Some of that has, again, to do with the slot play they've gotten without Johnson, so certainly that'll change. But I think Aaron Rodgers will have success moving the ball quickly, and that's going to be key because otherwise I do not love this 4-man rush against New York.
What I'm very curious about is how the Jets play now with sort of a different leader with Robert Saleh out, because it felt like the vibes were off. It looked like he was so stressed. It looks like he was deer in the headlights every single time the camera went to him. he just was not the same type of dude that he was over the last couple of years. And he, especially when he was hired with the New York Jets, that energy wasn't there. It just felt like the life has been sucked out of him. And it felt like the team was sort of taking on that energy identity of their coach. And it just felt frustrating, and it felt tense, and it was not, they were not playing loose. And Dalton Wasserman, who is my co-host on the NFL, the PFF NFL show, he found some really great statistics with the Jets offense specifically, and stuff that needs to change. When you talk about starting the game out well, like coming out, playing fun, playing free, especially with those scripted drives, the Jets have been terrible at that. When you look at PFF offensive grades in the first quarter, they're dead last in the NFL. On the first drive of the game, they're 30th in the NFL. Through the first 15 plays, right? 15 play script. Okay, these are the things that we worked on in practice. These are the things that we know how to do well. Dead last in the NFL in offensive grade in the first 15 plays of the game. And then when it comes to the first play of every single drive, their offensive grade is 29th. So no matter where it was, starting the game, starting the drive, whatever, this team cannot come out of the gate playing well on offense. And they need to do something to be better, and that you cannot be dead last in all of those categories on offense. And to me, that's what I'm going to watch in this game. Can the Jets come out and actually sustain something, or at least, kick something off in the right direction when it comes to those first plays in those first quarters? Because they're just starting way too far behind the 8 ball.
And I feel like if they cannot fix this run game at all, I don't know how I can feel confident in this offense going forward. They have to figure out concepts that work better for their backs. They have to find better ways of attacking defense, because this Bills defense, you can be had certainly on the ground. You don't have to be the Ravens to do that.
Right.
Who are you taking in this one? I haven't figured. I actually didn't decide. This is an audible for me.
Backup, new interim head coach bump. I'm going with the New York Jets.
I am too. Yeah, I'm feeling, and also like Rodgers in mode. This is my, but a lot of it is the matchup I talked about too. I do feel like they just match up better with this defense, and then everyone's gonna overreact and be like, the offense is fixed, everything's great, but it's not. However, and the Jets defense is still excellent as well. So, and Holbrook's their guy. He's a defensive coordinator. They're going to play hard for him.
I think this is going to be an extremely tight game.
Yeah.
I really do. I think this is going to be like maybe even a field goal at the end wins it type of
I agree. I think these teams are really well matched. I think if Buffalo can run the ball, feel a lot better about. And I think they can in this.
If
but
the Jets can run the ball, you probably feel a lot better, because I think people need to realize this. The Jets have been so bad for blocking Breece Hall. I don't even own Breece Hall in any of my fantasy teams, and it's still
horrifying.
mad.
It's horrifying. I know.
3 out of the 5 games that Breece Hall has played, he has a negative yards before contact average. That's
it's really
nuts.
It's a great example of all the how stats about rushing have gotten a lot better over the last 5 years, because now we have like expected yards per carry, run block win rate, yards per cut, like all these. They're all bad, by the way, for the Jets, and yet we're taking them. I don't know. We'll see. Trevor, this has been so much fun. You guys can check this out on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/@Mina Kimes. I will be back on Tuesday, coming from New York, with Dominique, doing the recap of Bills Jets. You can also check out our my Love is Blind recap show on YouTube. If you watch Love is Blind, it's called Love is Kimes. It's really, really fun. We have a week episode 7 through 9 recap that's going to be out tomorrow morning if you're caught up. Thank you, as always, to the folks at Omaha Productions who make this show: Kirsten Sebecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Tashton. And you guys should check out Trevor's work on his 500 podcasts that are all fantastic with people that you know, and follow him on Twitter. Otherwise, I will see you and talk to you on Tuesday.